Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. The topic of this It Came From the Network, Saturday Night Live, Season 25, Episode 15, aka the first time The Rock hosted the show. Now, since we're on Peacock now, we do have a little bit of a variety other than just wrestling shows, where we could see some wrestling talent. We've done this one other time, where we picked when Hulk Hogan and Mr. T hosted Saturday Night Live before WrestleMania 1. So I figured, why not go back and watch this? And if you've seen my shows before, I rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale, usually how much I enjoy matches or segments on the show. For this, I'm going to go by how funny each segment was. So if it's not really funny or bad, it's going to be a 1. If it's really funny, I'm giving it a 5. And through that scale, basically 3 would be average. We get the start of the show. Tim Meadows and Lorne Michaels are talking about, was it a good idea to invite these guys? Then we cut over to Vince McMahon, Triple H, Mick Foley, and The Big Show. Vince basically tells the other guys not to beat up The Rock, not to cause any trouble while they're there. He admonishes, the funniest thing about this is Big Show has a chair hiding behind him. He admonishes him. At the end of the segment, we see Big Show comes back out with Chris Kattan in his arms as the Mango character. Decently funny, a little bit on the dry side though. For this segment, I'm giving that a 3. That's followed up with our monologue for the night. We have The Rock coming out, and I haven't watched this since it aired, but for some reason I remember this being much funnier than it was. I think it relied a little bit too heavy with the interaction with Mick Foley, Triple H, again, The Big Show, and Vince McMahon and Lorne Michaels having a little bit, and all 3 of those guys were in the crowd. I think it relied on that too much without letting The Rock show his chops here, and he probably was just a bit nervous in my opinion. It was good. I remembered it being better. I'm giving this a 3. Next up, it's followed up with a mock commercial for a product called Uncle Jemima's Grain Liquor, and kind of set in a little bit of the Song of the South type vibe. And if you've never seen Song of the South, it's a little bit questionable in my opinion. Probably a lot racially insensitive in this time and age. It's a movie that Disney doesn't show anymore or hasn't released in several years, probably going back to when I was a child. This is a takeoff on that, as well as the Aunt Jemima pancake syrup, which is not a thing anymore for the same reason. The name and image was felt to be insensitive. So kind of interesting showing that way back in 2000. This was considered a thing. I think the Aunt Jemima thing was within the last 5 years or so. But kind of interesting. Obviously, they were taking off on Aunt Jemima the pancake syrup here. It fell a little flat for me. I usually love Tracy Morgan, but in this one, I just didn't like it. It really wasn't funny. I understood what it was, and I got what they were going for. It just didn't feel funny to me. I'm giving it a 2. That's followed up with what is probably my favorite segment of the show. We get Mr. Peepers, who was a Chris Kattan character, and basically he was found in the jungle and kind of a Tarzan-esque character that just did crazy stuff, would hump things, which he does in this, eat apples and spit them out at people, make weird noises. It was all played off very well between him and Will Ferrell, who was like the scientist always showing him off. In this, they bring in The Rock, who is Papa Peepers, Mr. Peepers' father, and just the absurdity of it, them two playing off of each other. They both kind of are humping his leg at the end, for lack of a better term. It's absurd and sophomoric, but it's still funny to me. I really enjoyed this segment. I'm giving it a 5. I probably enjoyed it as much as I did back then, and if I remember, this was the most hyped up segment of the show. So yeah, it was pretty good. That's followed up by a Weekend Update with Colin Farrell, which was heavily dominated by Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Hillary was in the running to be a senator in New York at the time. Bill was in the end of his presidency. A couple interesting things here. That Horatio Sands did a little bit of risque artwork with George Bush, or George W. Bush, and Al Gore. Also, there was a moment in here that was really surreal, because this is in March of 2000, and they're talking about Bin Laden. Osama Bin Laden is a known terrorist and was on life support, supposedly, which is weird because I honestly don't remember hearing the name Osama bin Laden until 9/11. So it was kind of surreal seeing his face here a full year and a half before that happened and hearing that he was basically about to die. One of those things that I don't know. Like, it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable knowing what would come after this, but just a weird moment in time. It does end up on a really positive note. We have Jimmy Fallon comes in, a very, very young Jimmy Fallon, by the way. And he's talking about spring break and basically doing parodies of popular songs at the time. Blink-182, Rob Thomas, a couple others there. I thought this was all really funny. Horatio Sands, Jimmy Fallon was the best part of it. Colin Quinn, I think, is super funny as well. I'm giving this segment a 4. Even with the weirdness with the Bin Laden thing popping up, I thought it was kind of funny all the way around that. Just that part was a little bit just weird. That's followed up with a segment in which they're making fun of Clark Kent and Superman, and everybody at the Daily Planet obviously knowing who Superman is. The Rock is playing Superman, he's playing Clark Kent, but you could see the Superman outfit under it. This entire segment was pretty good. It was really funny at points. It did kind of feel like it drug on a bit too long, though. I enjoyed it. I'm giving this one a 4 as well. That's followed up with another mock commercial, this time for a nicotine gum called Nicotrel, which Nicotrel actually wasn't the gum, it was The Rock as a guy named Nick, who basically would beat you up anytime you wanted a cigarette, thus making you not want a cigarette. Pretty good. Mick Foley, Triple H, and The Big Show all get involved in this as well, towards the end where they're all beating the guy up. It's funny. It was one of the ones where I could feel that The Rock wasn't really as comfortable as he would be later on in his comedic career or his acting career. I'm giving this one a 3. Next up, we have a segment which is a talk show called Today's Lady, kind of like a feminist, kind of The View type situation, where they're all talking about basically being treated properly, and they're going to bring in a man off the street. Obviously, the man is The Rock. Once The Rock comes in, they pretty much devolve into fawning all over him because obviously, again, he's The Rock. I get the concept again, but I just didn't find anything about it funny. I'm giving this one a 2. That's followed up with the last segment, another mock commercial. This one for Colonel Belmont's horse glue. And I can't even say it without laughing. It's played by Will Ferrell, who's playing a obvious kind of cowboy guy or cowboy character, and he plays it with such a straight face, talking about how many horses they have to kill just for one container of glue, and it's just hilarious in my opinion. Obviously, I can't even talk about it without laughing. You know how funny Will Ferrell is. This was a fantastic last segment. I'm giving that a 5 as well. We get the send-off at the end of the show. All in all, a good show. I don't know how much was cut out. I don't know how many segments, because I really don't remember it. I mean, we're talking almost 25 years ago the last time I watched it. The version on the network is about 45 minutes or so obviously there was a good amount cut out. Obviously the musical segments with AC/DC were cut out, and probably a couple other things, but like I said, I honestly don't remember what they were. Overall, I'm going to give this show a 4. The highlights were really high. The Mr. Peepers, Colonel Belmont's horse glue. Weekend Update was really funny. Some of it was just mediocre and a couple things I didn't like. But overall, I thought it was enjoyable. You could definitely see the very beginnings of The Rock as a movie star or a comedic star, and his movies with Kevin Hart are obviously really funny. Again, overall, I'm going to give the show a 4. I thought it was pretty enjoyable. With that being said, if you'd like to see me do more of these where I go a little bit off the beaten path, besides reviewing just wrestling matches, maybe some other stuff, I'm pretty sure Peacock has Psych, and Psych has had several wrestlers guest star. Maybe I could do one of those, or other wrestlers that have guest starred on some of the shows that are on there. Let me know if you want to see more of this, if you want to see more of these deviations. Obviously, I'm not going to do it every week, but every now and again, just to throw a curveball in, just to break the monotony. It's basically why I did it here, to break the monotony for myself. Let me know if you like that idea. Hit it up in the comments while you're there. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Share the video. And if you see that join button, that's how you become a member. If you made it all the way to the end, let me know who your favorite Saturday Night Live cast member of all time would be. Put it down there in the comments. With that being said, my name is George Coles, and it's been another episode of It Came From the Network.